of which you were.
Yep.
Uh, but was any of this active when he was alive?
There we go. We are live right now.
Okay.
They got to hear just a little bit of that, I think, on YouTube. So let me go back to Facebook. We'll get that started. Hey, good afternoon. If you're joining us, I'm Ben. I'm off screen. I'm coming on screen just a minute. I'm getting our live feed started. Pastor Curtis and I are going to have a little discussion we'd love for you to join us in about last week's sermon, which was from Psalm 100,
Yes.
dealing with thankfulness.
hmm
And hi. Greetings. Thanks for joining us. We're going to leave this discussion up for a while, so you can join us now live, or if we get cut off or we run out of time or whatever, you can come back and find this later. And so last week, your message was on Psalm 100,
Yep.
leading up to Thanksgiving, talking about thankfulness. And the question was asked at the end, what prevents us from being thankful? And you've gone ahead and done all the hard work, and so
Well,
all I get to do
no,
is
I
kind of
think you
sit
got the
here.
hard work. I've just typed some stuff up. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done all the hard work of putting together some discussion points about what keeps us from being thankful. So if you have any comments as we go through this, drop them there on Facebook. We'd love to hear your comments, read them. We will interact with you, or YouTube as well. And, we just look forward to hearing from you. So what keeps us from being thankful? You've got several here, and they all resonate with me. So we'll just start right down through.
Okay, we'll work our way down.
Yeah,
All
sounds
right.
good.
First thing I thought was being self-absorbed.
Yep.
I mean, man, we're self-centered. Me, what I want, how I feel, or our little group.
Mm-hmm.
So self-absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we are so selfish,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like everything I want has to be this way, and when it's not, then
Mm-hmm.
the world's falling apart without realizing. Don't want to get too political, but we still live in the greatest country in the world, but people can't see that.
It's true.
You
But
know,
even just saying that's almost controversial
I know
these
it is,
days.
it is,
Yeah.
but that's because I think again we're so locked in our little box,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't see everything out around us.
Mm-hmm.
And things, yeah, I mean, aren't great always, but still, where else would you rather live?
Well, you're right. Our political discussions the last few years are one of the best illustrations of what you're talking about. Was it Ocasio-Cortez or
hmm
Ocasio-Cortez? I almost said the derogatory thing. I
Right.
sometimes say sorry about
Yeah.
that. Sorry for those that might support, but that this generation's being cheated.
Right.
As we
Right.
sit here in the most comfort that any human being has
Has
ever
ever?
had.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Another illustration I think that's great for being self-absorbed. What comes after Thanksgiving?
Christmas.
Black Friday.
Oh, that's
The
right.
next
Right.
day, what
Yep.
are we doing? We're waiting at the door of our favorite
Yes.
store.
Yes.
First thing to buy what we
Yeah,
want.
and actually, up until this year, we would leave on Thanksgiving meal and
Yeah.
go stand in Walmart because they
Yeah.
open at 6,
Mm-hmm.
start the sales. But yes, that's true. I gotta have,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like all about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so often the scriptures talks about either the group,
Mm-hmm.
like Israel was the nation. It wasn't just me and the nation, me
Mm-hmm.
and the context of God working. It was the nation and what was best for the nation, and the New Testament is the church. But we just get so locked in on us,
Mm-hmm.
or on me, that things don't always work well, and so I complain,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't see the greatness of God because I'm locked in on my little issue or my little world.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
quick history lesson. I mean, when you look back through history, there has never been a society that was so focused on the individual, and
right?
and there's benefits to that, right? So
Well,
they
yeah,
came over here, and we are one nation under God, but we are we're individuals here, right? Each individual is endowed with certain inalienable rights,
right.
but that grew into this individualism, selfishness now,
Yes,
and so yes,
yes,
we just got to be aware of the culture we live in.
yes. And you have to fight back, and it's hard for us to fight. It's
Hmm.
number one, it goes against my human nature to want
Hmm.
to fight back
Hmm.
against that. But I think that driving of my nature just to be focused on me, 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 and what I want alone keeps me from being grateful
Mm-hmm.
for what God's doing all around me
Mm-hmm.
and what He's doing for you. Because I'm supposed to rejoice when you're rejoicing,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't because I don't have what I want.
Yeah, and
You
you
know.
got
That's right.
it.
That's right.
You
Absolutely.
got more than I do.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So, these kind of tie together
Yeah, they
to
do.
some extent. So, being self-absorbed flows right into feeling entitled,
Yep.
and so yeah, talk on that.
Again, like you said, they do. They work hand in hand. I have a right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they wrote, about the inalienable rights, I don't think they meant like it was the right to have everything you want every time you want it and
Right.
exactly the way you want it. But
Yep.
that's how we feel now. I
Yep.
have a right
Yep.
to have this. You know, and again with the first one, if I don't get what I feel entitled to,
Mm-hmm.
then how can I be thankful?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
history lesson, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving flows out of history, a history lesson, really.
Mm-hmm.
How many generations here suffered?
Mm-hmm.
The generation before mine, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
These are World War II folks.
Mm-hmm.
They gave up, all kinds of stuff for the war effort.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't complain. They just knew it was necessary.
The greatest generation. There's a
Yes,
reason
yeah,
they were
yeah,
called
yeah,
that. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we feel we've grown into this entitled. Feel like I should have it all and
Mm-hmm.
have it my way and when I want it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't get those things, we just it's hard to be thankful when I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm being cheated
Mm-hmm.
somehow. You
Yeah,
know?
it flows into our shopping. The customer's always right.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
You're entitled
Yep,
to we are very customer focused, me focused
yep.
culture.
I
So
have 5 siblings. Well, had 5 siblings, but parents will split stuff up.
mhm,
And being one of the younger, 5 out of 6.
mhm,
Your slice of the pie wasn't always the biggest one.
mhm.
Not necessarily physically pie, but
Yeah.
whatever it may have been. Um, and you look at that going, they got more than me.
Mhm,
Instead of going, at least I got some. you
mhm,
know. But I think that's our generation. It's like everybody gets more to pie.
mhm,
And not just a generation, that's just our world today.
mhm,
If you got more to pie than I do, or I feel like I'm entitled to, it's hard for me to look up to God and say, I have something. I have a roof over my head, and I have everything I need.
mhm,
But I think that feeling of self entitlement, it just strips that
mhm.
Thanksgiving.
And tomorrow's the opportunity really to focus on that. Not necessarily a religious holiday, but certainly one that's that has biblical underpinnings.
Mm-hmm.
So before we move to number three, because number three kind of changes direction, we got being self-absorbed and being entitled. I mean, maybe this is outside of your preparation, but I'm sure you can speak on it because you're wise. So what's a way that we can tomorrow kind of reset and maybe something that we could do that gets us out of our self-absorbed,
Yeah.
entitled
Yeah.
mentality. Are there any things that you do on Thursday that set that a day apart? Maybe.
Well, I mean, one thing, thinking about the past, and actually, in a lot of ways, that's jumping into the next one, but, it hasn't always been that good for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know it hasn't always been that good for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's one thing we can do is,
Mm-hmm.
is remember how things used to be, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or how it was for our parents who
Mm-hmm.
didn't have maybe a day to sit down and have all their family together and have this big scrumptious
Mm-hmm.
meal together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and probably most cultures that came to America, at least that first one or two,
Mm-hmm.
suffered.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
and so now
Worked hard or
yeah,
whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
It
and
was
and
hard.
Thanksgiving might have been real small for
Yeah.
them, but
Exactly.
uh, so we could actually be thankful and say, hey, I've got it better. I certainly have better than my family had it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe that's one of the things we can do is just look back and see how far God has brought our families,
Yeah.
and the fact that we can be together.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow we'll have. We did last year. My son came up for Thanksgiving last year, but there had been 8 years when our whole family wasn't
Wow.
there for Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And so tomorrow will be the second year in a row when we have the entire family there
Yeah.
for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll be grateful for that for sure.
One thing that comes to my mind is we're in Missouri, and there aren't the restrictions on how many people can get together and
Right.
whatnot. And of course, those things are hot topics right now. I'm not going to get into whether I agree, disagree, or whatever, but there certainly are going to be people in places who are lonely
Mm-hmm.
or separated from who they'd normally be with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one way that we could reach out, and I was talking to someone else about this week, is to find someone who is
Right.
and include them in
Right.
ours.
Yep.
It would be an unselfish thing to do. It often makes you more thankful for what you have
Yeah.
when you
Have someone.
serve
Yep.
someone else.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Getting outside of ourselves.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. We can't all get together, but we got YouTube and
Right.
Skype and
Yeah.
Zoom. You know.
Yep.
Be grateful that we have that technology.
Yeah, or just a text to check in on somebody. I mean,
Right.
I'm old enough, right? I'm in this generation where I remember the phone on the wall when I was little, and all the
And the
way to where
rotary
we are
dial.
now. But I'm still amazed sometimes that I can just shoot a text to somebody on any given Sunday from the comfort of my chair and check in on them,
Mhm.
and we tend to take that for granted too
Yep.
much. When I was a kid, you sent somebody a letter, and it took 4 days to get there
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. No
So
kidding. No
check in on
kidding.
some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You started to segue into this, and we backed off. But the next one you said is forgetfulness.
Yeah. Um, was looking at all the times God says, remember
Uh-huh.
or don't forget,
Yeah.
because He knew human nature
Yeah.
is we forget.
Yeah.
As soon as they got out of the Red Sea in Exodus 14, they celebrated in 15,
Mm-hmm.
and then they started complaining in 16.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we forget, and so he said, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Not that they would forget it, but he wanted them to set that apart.
Yeah.
That this day is special above all others. In Deuteronomy 9:7, he said, remember, do not forget how you provoked the Lord to wrath in the wilderness. But he kept reminding them, this is where you were. I brought you out. This is what you did, but I was faithful anyway. And I think we get forgetful about all the blessings of God,
Mm-hmm.
all the things He's done, all the ways He's blessed our families, us,
Mm-hmm.
the growth we've seen in ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
other people. We're sitting in this nice church.
No kidding.
I remember my first sermons were in Charles Llewellyn's living room.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And now you got the lights on you.
Yeah.
Really in a daydream of a place.
absolutely,
to preach
absolutely. But all throughout Scripture, and Luke, they're having the Last Supper, and Jesus, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget me. Don't
Mhm.
forget what I did for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we forget. We are all forgetful people.
Mm-hmm.
And if we would sit back sometimes, I think, and just purposely remember what God has done,
Mm-hmm.
those lean times in our lives, those times when we didn't know what to do, and how He guided us, those times He blessed us unexpectedly. If we would just sit back and remember,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would bring
Mhm.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it would.
I
I kind of regret now. Last Sunday, if anybody watched our service, we sang the song "Come Thou Fount," and I left out that one verse. Here
Yeah.
I raise mine Ebenezer.
Yeah.
And that's what an Ebenezer is not an altar, but
A stone of help, I think it is,
Yeah.
and it's a reminder, though.
a reminder.
Yeah.
Here I raise my Ebenezer,
Yep.
which is remembering,
Uh-huh.
what God's done for me,
Mhm.
because He is that fount of all the blessings
Yep.
that we have. So.
But I think that's an important one. Is we get forgetful about what we should be going through, which is hell.
Mhm. Mhm.
But God sent His Son to die for us, and we forget that we didn't have to be born in America.
Mhm.
I could have been born in any given place in the world at any given time in the world,
Mhm.
but God chose this country, this time. But we forget all that stuff. It's not. It wasn't your choice to be born in America.
Mm-mm.
you
No,
know.
it certainly is. There are certainly those blessings, and then isn't it a blessing? I mean, it's been a blessing for me at times to read down through the Sermon on the Mount. I mean, in God's economy, blessed are the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed are the meek, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really true. We should really be grateful for that.
Yep.
So often we're like, blessed are the poor,
Yeah.
but no, no, no. There's God's blessing in even poverty, meekness,
Yep.
hunger, spiritual and physical, and so
Um, when we were in the Sermon on the Mount, and I can't remember, I think it was Matthew 6, but I don't know exactly. I showed that picture of the old man at with praying over his bowl of
yeah,
soup, and then
remember,
the contrasting picture of the woman.
yeah,
Yeah, grace, I think, is what the first one is called, and the one with the woman is called gratitude.
yeah,
And yet, if you look at it, this is a picture painted by a guy, and he's from Minnesota originally. I remember the story now. But to be thankful, even to something as simple as a bowl of soup,
right,
you know, um, wow.
mm-hmm.
But we forget all that.
Oh
We,
yeah,
we we just think I should have all this stuff, and when that's not there, wow, God's not good to me. And the very fact that I'm breathing air,
right,
is
top side,
yeah, it's topside, and so many people are, on ventilators
yep,
in our country right now, and having all kind of problems. But we forget all those things.
yep,
So just to remind ourselves,
absolutely.
make a list of, "Oh, man, a year ago this was going on in my life, but boy, this is how God has changed things."
And again, a practical thing to do. It's uncomfortable because we don't do these things in our family, or at least it's uncomfortable for me. But what I'm getting ready to say is, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. Maybe think today about something that you could do tomorrow to remember what it is that you
Mm-hmm.
have to be thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
So we got three things that we've talked about prevents us from being thankful: self-absorbed, entitled, forgetful. The fourth thing you've got written down is our lack of confidence in
Mm-hmm.
God's character. Sometimes we forget who He is.
Yep.
So, yeah, talk about that.
Remember in Psalm 100, verse 4 said, "Be thankful to Him and bless His name." And it's almost like saying, "Why?" And verse 5 says, "For the Lord is good; His mercy is everlasting; His truth endures, or His faithfulness endures to all generations." I think when people aren't sure about the character of God, that He is always good, that He is always merciful, that He is always faithful,
Hmm.
He's always just. If they lose sight of the character and the
Hmm.
dependability of God, it's
Hmm.
hard to be thankful. Things aren't going the way you think, and you think God's being mean to me, He's punishing
Hmm.
me, He's forgotten all about
Hmm.
me. But if we remember His character, oh no, He everything He does is for my good.
Hmm.
He's always faithful. He's eternally merciful to me.
Hmm.
But just to remind ourselves what the character of God is like and be confident in that is, like, okay, even when things aren't going so well,
Hmm.
God's still good.
Well,
You know,
and this world uh, loves to attack that.
right?
Especially those that don't believe. But I mean, the culture
Mm-hmm.
that we live in, God is a cosmic killjoy. He doesn't want to let you do
What you want to do? Yeah.
what your
Yep.
body says you should do,
Yep.
or he's the one that ordained the killing off of all kinds of people, and we don't even bother to dig into the history or the
Mm-hmm.
context around that
Right.
to understand. We
Right.
just go, oh no, we don't want to serve that God.
Right.
Uh, but
But if you're confident in the character of God, you
yeah,
go no matter what happens.
yep,
God's at work here.
yep,
God's doing something. I may not understand. I may never understand it in this life, but God's doing something. He's working out a plan.
yep,
That plan's good,
yep,
and it's not just about me.
right.
And so being confident in the character of God, I go, oh, I really don't like this, but thank you that you are in control still, and that you do know what you're doing.
Hmm.
But if I'm not confident about His character, I'm gonna grumble. I'm gonna complain.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be happy.
No, that's a
You know.
good point.
So I think personally, just that reminder.
Hmm.
Remember the character of God. Oh yeah, okay.
Hmm.
He's keeping something. He's doing something.
Hmm.
Um, famous story. We had a lady at our church, Gladys Doan,
Hmm.
who knew a person who survived this. I don't know if it was 40. I think it was 42. Boston College and Holy Cross football. Northeastern football. Boston College was a juggernaut. They were supposed to just roll over Holy Cross and then go to the Rose Bowl. Coach was so confident they had this massive party planned at a place called the Coconut Grove Restaurant. Holy Cross thumped them, and the coach got so mad that he said, "You're not going to the party." Well, you can imagine the guys saying, "Oh, God hates us, so we would have won." Blah 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 blah. That night, a fire broke out in that place, killed several hundred people. I mean, just type it in, look it up, Coconut Grove fire. Gladys Doan knew a person who survived that fire.
No kidding.
But you know, if you're confident in the character of God, you sit there and go, "Well, I really don't like this. This stinks.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe God's trying to teach me humility." You know, you find some way
Yeah.
to realize God's good.
Yeah.
But I bet the next day they went, "Wow,"
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that
because
would have been an
had we
eye-opener.
been there,
Yeah.
yeah. But you know, I think we all struggle with it, and we struggle at different times in different ways. But
Yeah.
to come to grips with the character of God, I think
Sure.
will certainly help
Yeah.
with Thanksgiving. And if you're not confident He's a good, loving, merciful, faithful God, you're
Yeah.
going to grump, you're going to complain.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not going to be happy.
Yeah, he is the ultimate good.
Yes.
So
Yeah, He doesn't do good. He is good.
Jesus, you know, when the one ruler came to him and said, "Good teacher," and he said, "Why do you call me good? There's only one that's good."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, Jesus was really pointing out there is only one good.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The fifth one you mentioned is worldliness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
these
that's
are starting to tie together.
yeah. And that's I kept thinking,
No, it's a good one.
do I put it like that? You know, the word itself, and I think, yeah, okay.
So outside of the church, there are people, we talk about worldliness all the time in sermons and whatnot, but
Mhm.
there may be people that aren't in church all the time that go, "What do you mean
Yeah.
worldliness?"
Well, a focus that's on here and now,
Mhm.
rather than realizing there is an eternity to be lived, to be lived in the presence of God or separated from Him in hell. And a focus on stuff and gaining stuff and the things in this life, achieving, being, doing in this life, and forgetting all about the next, so all about the God who rules time, saying, "I've got things to do here." And I'm just focused on what I can get, what I can gain, what I can experience in this life. Um, Mark 4:18, when he's doing the parable of the sower and the seed, and this is some was sown among the thorns, and this says, "Oh, the ones who have," he says, "Others are the ones who heard seed sown among the thorns. These are the ones who have heard the word, but the worries of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and the desire for other things enter in and choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful." And you know, I imagine he's saying this. That, you know, some people hear the word, but life gets in the way.
Mhm.
You know, I hear the word and I know I may have to suffer, I may have to sacrifice. I want this. I want an easy life. I want all the stuff I want in life. I want to go to places I want to go. I want my children to have the things I want them to have. That's all,
Mhm.
you know, incorporating that word worldliness, I
Mhm.
guess.
Mhm.
Being so focused down here. And he said, you know, they hear the word, but all that stuff gets in the way. Their desires for life down here.
Mhm.
And again, I think going back up to being like self-absorbed. I'm so concerned with life down here. I gotta have stuff down here the way I want it. When it's not,
Mhm.
then it's hard to be thankful, you
Mhm.
know, because I don't have the big car I want, the new
Mhm.
car I want, or whatever it is that I may want, you know,
Mhm.
in life.
But worldliness is it. You're right to set it apart because it is a little bit different. I mean, the one that comes to mind for me is Jesus said, "What the pride of, or the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride
Pride
of
of life.
life."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do. We organize our whole lives to. We have a picture of what we want to look like, you know, at the end, and we want to work toward that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's all these things that set up. We need an education. We need the house. We need the kids. We need the wife, or in the other order. But you know,
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the wife and then the kids,
Right.
or the husband and then the kids, in the woman's case.
First
So
comes love,
yeah,
then comes marriage.
yeah. I hope.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Right.
But you know, we organize our whole lives in order for these worldly things. Actually, the word secular works out better. You know, without
Yeah.
regard for the eternal, which is
Right.
really what secular means.
Yep.
It's all of these non-eternal things that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
organize our life as.
And obviously, you know, we live in a physical world. We
Yeah,
do have to be concerned with
yeah.
physical things. But when the primary focus is driven just on the physical,
Hmm.
you know, then, you know, it prevents all those things. I can't understand the character of God or appreciate it when I'm so concerned about the physical
Mm-mm.
and getting what I want in the physical, worrying about the
Hmm.
physical.
Yeah, Jesus said, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added
Right.
unto you."
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that's what we're after. Oh, this is the one that probably hits me the closest home. I'm a pretty impatient person. How does impatience keep us from being thankful?
We're never, you know, we're waiting in the line to get in. I just saw it today. They built an In-N-Out burger in Colorado, and people are waiting down in these long lines of
Yeah,
traffic to get in, and a fight broke out of people waiting. Instead of going, I'm going to get my burger. Just be patient. Everybody's honking their horn, and they're complaining. It's like that with any line.
yep,
If it's at the drive-through,
sure.
if it's at the movie theater waiting to purchase a ticket, it doesn't matter.
The
And
selfishness led them to be there because they wanted in on it,
right,
and then the impatience led them to fight once they got. I
right,
read an article about this. Just as a side note, it would have been quicker for a lot of those people to drive to Phoenix, Arizona,
and
get
get
their
what
In-N-Out burger,
right,
drive back to
then to
Colorado.
wait in line. Yes, yes.
It's insane.
But we all get cranky.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Your wife's taking too long.
Yeah.
You're in the car.
Yeah.
And if we get that way with other people, we sure get that way with God
Oh yeah.
when He's not working as quickly as we like Him to be.
Yep.
And so I go, and I'm guilty of this. I never doubt if God can do something. My thing is, well, if He wanted to, He would.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's like where patience comes in. Instead of waiting for God to unveil whatever it is going to happen, His will. I just want it my way, and so I get impatient, and it's hard for me to say, well, God knows what He's doing, and I just need to trust Him.
Yeah.
I just start complaining,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it is a pitfall for those of us that believe that God is powerful enough and sovereign enough to do anything. You could do it if you wanted to.
Right,
Why don't you want to?
right, yeah.
What is the problem?
And right now,
Yeah.
and we don't even know that that the answer is not on the way,
Right.
but it's just not here
Right.
now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Impatience.
and I think Sunday we talk. In fact, I'm certain Sunday we talk about Abraham and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
God said, "You're gonna have a son," and 11 years later, when he's 86, Sarah says, "Take my handmaid and
Mm-hmm.
sleep with her and fulfill God's prophecy
Mm-hmm.
or promise that way." And that wasn't the son, and it caused problems then, and it still exists all these
Mm-hmm.
1,000 years later
Oh yeah.
between the descendants of Ishmael and descendants of Isaac.
Yep.
But impatience, and none of us are ever grateful when we're patient,
No.
impatient. So
The last one you've got is kind of interesting. It makes me think of a lot of situations that I know of right now. So it'd be interesting to see what you say. You've got the seventh thing is spiritual coldness or indifference.
hmm
Explain what you're thinking.
Jesus, you remember when He told, I think it's Laodiceans, that you're not hot or cold
Mm-hmm.
because you're not. I'm gonna spit you out of my mouth. Um, and there's so many of us who aren't cold. We aren't spiritually lost and need salvation, but we're not hot. We're not
Mm-hmm.
walking with God and zealous. We're just kind of floating,
Mm-hmm.
treading water spiritually. And I think we get bored. Okay, let me speak for myself. When I find myself in that spiritual treading of water, which I do, uh, everything is bland.
Mm-hmm.
Life is bland.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's just me personally, but I don't feel very thankful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's all right.
Yeah.
So
What this makes me think of, actually, indifference is one of the bigger symptoms of depression. Someone who they don't enjoy things that they
right,
used to do. Spiritual coldness would be sort of a lack of inspiration about about anything spiritual. And I know right now several situations where I'm not diagnosing because I'm not a psychologist, but where I suspect someone's depressed.
mm-hmm,
Not a lot of interaction with other people, and there's
mm-hmm,
this spiritual coldness
right.
and indifference, and
It,
it's a depression.
and I guess part of that as well is, instead of looking at this and going, wow, this is a revelation
Mm-hmm.
from God of so many things, His love
Mm-hmm.
for me, His will for me, His plan. It's just, whatever.
Yeah,
There's nothing leaping off the page.
yeah,
So it's easy not to even bother.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, most of us do get to that
Mm-hmm.
point. And when you are, it's hard to be grateful for anything.
And it's hard to know how to get out of. So maybe what do you say to somebody that, because actually I was there a couple, 3 weeks ago, and I put in the effort. Well, I'm gonna jump ahead and answer the question if I don't stop.
Yeah, go ahead.
But
Well, go ahead and answer it.
I was there for. All right, I'll just tell the story. I mean, I was kind of there. I had times where I read my Bible and felt like those words were alive at that moment.
Hmm.
And wow, what how that applies to me today or a situation that I'm seeing, and went through Bible college and went through several years of ministry here, where every day it was like something's coming together that makes sense, and it's always alive and exciting. And then honestly, recently I'd kind of hit a point where it's like I'll sit down and read. It's like I already been here. I've
Right.
already done
Yeah.
this, and then you feel guilt as a pastor, particularly. I've got this
Yeah.
guilt of doesn't mean anything to me. How do I expect it to mean something to somebody
Yep.
else? And sort of a spiritual coldness and indifference.
Hmm.
But here's what I noticed, and what I would encourage anybody: if you put in the work, if you keep putting in the work
Hmm.
and don't stop, those moments come back around.
It's like exercising your body. Yeah, as you can tell, I don't do much of that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was doing it for a month, and I actually had lost weight,
Mm-hmm.
and then I messed up my knee.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but the people who do it, I'm sure every day they go in the gym. It's not like, oh yeah, it's 6:30. I want to. But they
Exactly.
keep putting in the work and they start seeing
Yep.
results. And I think that's the same spiritually. But also, I think one of the things we forget is, you know, in the Old Testament, a lot of times you see that revival. That revival began with confession,
Yeah.
of sin. Sin I know I'm committing, and sins that I don't even necessarily think like right now. God, I don't really care that much.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, sometimes we don't want to be honest and say those things.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say, I know I shouldn't have done this, thought this, said that, whatever. But to say, right now I'm just kind of in a funk.
Mm-hmm.
Not really that important. That's confession. God honors that.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But that's another way.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do persevere in the
Mm-hmm.
midst of those tough times. But I think one of those things might include, just a confession to get
Mm-hmm.
along with God and say,
Mm-hmm.
here's where I am,
Mm-hmm.
and you know it anyway. But it's good for me.
Mm. I tend toward that. I have this up and down personality. I'm either one of the more fun people you've ever met, or one of the more uninspired and
Well, I've
boring
never
people.
I've never felt the uninspired part,
But
but
I had a friend that picked up on that once in my life, and he said, back in Britain in the medieval times, there was a word for that. They called it sullenness, and it was a sin. And these days we're like, we tend not to look at it as a sin.
right,
And I want to be careful how much judgment I
yeah,
cast on
yeah,
somebody who's living in judgment of themselves anyway. But there is that. I mean, it's sullenness, a constant sadness, or almost willful sadness, or a refusal of joy,
mm-hmm,
and that's not a good
mm-hmm.
thing.
And okay, let's go back to Psalm 100. Shout for joy,
Exactly.
shout joyfully.
Yep.
Not an option,
Yep.
command.
Exactly.
And sometimes we have to
Confess.
confess, and sometimes I just have to say, in spite of what I feel, God, you're
Yeah.
still God.
Exactly.
You're still ruling heaven and earth, and people may say, well, that's fake, that's phony. No, that's just acknowledging the truth.
Yep.
And I think we follow our feelings way too much sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
if I would, be obedient, I'm going to shout for joy. I'm going to confess who God is. And I know that works. I know times in my life when I've done that, and it's broken that coldness and dryness and lethargy in my own heart and spirit. So,
Hmm.
but I think all those things just contribute to our feeling like,
Hmm.
blasé, and not
Hmm.
really feeling thankful
Hmm.
when we have. If you're watching this, you obviously have something that you're watching, a computer, a phone. That's a reason to be thankful right
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
you know. Um, but we find so many things that we don't have, and so it's easy to not be thankful
Hmm.
instead of looking around and going, "Wow, I can watch these guys, and I'm at home in the comfort of my own bed, or I'm at work, or I'm
Hmm.
driving even, or who
Hmm.
knows what they're doing."
Hmm.
But You know, thankfulness, if you think, comes, but we don't think, we feel.
Mm-hmm.
But if we sit down and do some thinking, it'd
Mm-hmm.
be real easy to be thankful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Nope. That's exactly right. Now, so many things we take for granted. So tomorrow, well, starting now, but tomorrow, we take a minute and think outside of yourself. Um, Realize that you're not entitled to anything that you have, including the clothes on your back, and
mm-hmm.
so be grateful for all those things. Look for someone to serve. Um, yeah, remember that we can have confidence in God and His character. He is the ultimate good, and you know, be patient. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't even want to say that one out loud,
yeah,
but be patient, and yeah, and if you're not feeling it, confess that,
yeah.
and dig a little deeper.
You just threw that out. You said that, and it popped in my mind. I don't know if it's 34, Psalm 34 maybe. It says, I waited patiently on the Lord. He heard my cry, and he goes through all the stuff God did, put a new song in my mouth.
Yeah,
But he starts off by saying, I waited patiently
yeah,
on the Lord.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. I've experienced it. So, anything else you want to?
Nope. Other than, like I said, think. Because that's the problem. We feel, but we don't think. And if you think, you have so many reasons to be thankful.
Yeah,
Just take some time and think.
yeah,
Wherever you are, just think about, what God has done, where you were last year, what was going on. Maybe you were grieving last year, but God's brought you through that or helped heal in that grieving process.
yeah,
But think, and as you think about God, my experience, and I think the experience of Scripture, especially like in the Psalms always remind them about what God did. Psalm 136, he goes through almost like all of creation and then the redemption of God
yeah,
to make them think, oh, yeah, wow.
yeah,
And in each verse goes, his love endures forever.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that they could break forth in praise,
yeah,
really. But they have to think.
yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Thank you
no,
for
thank you.
preparing all this, and it makes it easy for me to sit down and
Hey,
talk through it. So
well, you do the hard work back there. You do the real hard
all I
work
do
back
is
there.
click a few buttons. So I really appreciate you joining us. Please share this with anybody you think might need a little pick me up for this Thanksgiving, and look for us online on Sunday on this YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. And again, drop us a line. Love to hear from you. Appreciate you joining us. I'm going to go kick things off.
All right. I was looking, been working on next year, and piece of me has still wanted to go back to the Psalms again. You remember we did that a few years ago, and piece of me still wants to go back to the Psalms again. Um, I don't know. Last time we did that, the book you told me about, and I bought it. Un, under, Understanding the Psalms, or talk about learning to love the Psalms. Yes, yes, that was a great one because we walked through each book, gave a little. Here's what book one's about, and some Psalms from there. But I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about that, and maybe I've got the first 3 months of next year planned. So maybe we'll go back.